Good evening, good evening, good evening. So glad that all of you are able to join us here on tonight for our third town hall in the Reimagining Public Safety Initiative. And what a town hall we have for you on tonight. Good evening and welcome. As I mentioned earlier, our third town hall gathering, Safety and the Supreme Court. This town hall is part of the Reimagining Public Safety Initiative between the Black Public Defender Association and Gifts of Life Ministries Public Advocacy and Social Justice Initiative. This initiative aims at introducing a model for asking directly impacted communities, what does safety mean to you? In this project, we will partner with groups, institutions, and organizations to plan, execute, and document public safety needs assessment right here in Memphis and in Shelby County. I am your host for the evening, the Reverend Dr. Andre Johnson, Senior Pastor of Gifts of Life Ministries and the Executive Director of the G-Life Public Advocacy and Social Justice Institute. Since we started this initiative, we have discussed public safety, but not in a way that you are used to hearing it talk about. Typically, when we hear talk about public safety, it involves increasing police budgets and bodies, longer prison sentences, and or building more prisons. Our current DA, Amy Wyrick, lobbied successfully, for example, to get the Truth in Sentencing bill passed at the state level. Now, here in the state of Tennessee, people will now have to serve their entire sentence without any opportunity for parole. This means no matter how much they have been rehabilitated, no matter how many classes in prison they attend, no matter what they do towards reform, they will not be ever released on parole, actually making the parole system in the state of Tennessee null and void. Recently here in Shelby County, for example, again, our county commissioners approved $13 million more in funding for a juvenile detention center that, as reports indicate, has already cost us just about as much. And the Crime Commission's 62-page Safe Community Action Plan is so grounded in the assumption that policing, and more police makes us safer. So when the talk about public safety usually starts, it seems as if we always go punitive. We always are heavy on the law enforcement side. However, tonight, and as we have done in the last two town halls, we want to try other ways, because if community safety is the issue that many say it is, why do we insist on doing the same thing if the same thing is not working? And may I add, really has never worked. It's almost as if we were being real cynical about it, that people want to continue to do the same thing because they know it doesn't work. So tonight, we want to talk about some of the recent Supreme Court decisions and the role they play in keeping us safe. Remember, we are opening up avenues so people can understand safety more than in a law enforcement understanding. As the Supreme Court completed its docket for this past term, many are feeling less safe than ever before. From, of course, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, restricting prisoners' rights, to the rollback of the EPA to regulate carbon output, restricting vaccine mandates, even in a pandemic, the separation of church and state, to an expansion of freedom of religion issues. Many are wondering if the Supreme Court is a place where one could go and find any kind of relief. For instance, in Carson versus Macon, the Supreme Court further eroded the bedrock principle of the separation of church and state by allowing religious schools in Maine to receive public funded taxpayer dollars in order for parents to send their children to private religious schools. However, according to the Washington Post, quote, there are some concerns over whether the civil rights laws that apply to public schools extend to private schools that receive public funding. In the main case, to be more specific, one of the Christian schools barred gay and transgender students and teachers, a practice that will violate federal law if enacted in a public school. The Post continues, quote, legal scholars anticipate that at some point the court would have to decide whether religious charter schools are permissible. Charter schools are public funded but privately managed, included by religious organizations that deliver non-sectarian instruction during the day but provide religious after-school programs. Now, why is that important? Well, according to our governor here in Tennessee, Governor Bill Lee, school vouchers will be implemented only in Nashville and Shelby County after a Davidson County court lifted the injunction on Lee's signature 2019 education savings account law. Families, again, only in Shelby County and Davidson, the two cities, Memphis and Nashville, can now pay for private school tuition with tax dollars. And let's be real about the understanding of religion here. Many of these rulings only have, quote, Christian as the religion in mind, and a very conservative understanding of the faith as well. So it's not unreasonable to ask someone who is not Christian, do you feel safe? Now, I can go on, but we have a wonderful panel that will highlight other cases in which we can legitimately ask, do we feel safe? And again, opening up an understanding of safety, public safety, not grounded in law enforcement. I know what you're asking now. Who is this wonderful panel you have, Reverend Johnson? So I'm so glad you asked. First, we have attorney Elena Bloodworth. She serves as the Deputy Director of the Black Public Defender Association. And prior to becoming Deputy Director of BPDA, Attorney Bloodworth served as a public defender and Director of Students at the Baton Rouge Office of Public Defender. Ms. Bloodworth has also served as the Social Justice Chair of the Baton Rouge branch of the NAACP, and her current role with the Black Public Defenders Association, she continues to lead and stay dedicated to the mission of improving the quality of public defense for low-income communities. Thank you, Elena Bloodworth, for being with us here tonight. Next up, we have Reverend Frank Johnson. Brother Frank is an active member of the Shelby County Democratic Party. He serves on the primary board and was elected to the Grassroots Council in 2017, representing Executive Committee Shelby County District 10. He is currently serving as the president of the ILC Ball Community Association and executive director of Depot Communities United. Reverend Johnson is currently advocating for a new public works program to upgrade and modernize the infrastructure right here in Memphis, Tennessee. And if we have time tonight, maybe he can share his story on how he became one of the leading activists here in Memphis on environmental justice issues. Reverend Frank, thank you for joining us tonight. Next, we have Sharice Scott. Sharice is the CEO and founder of Sister Reach and has worked as an educator, an advocate, and an activist in reproductive justice movement for 18 years. In 2011, Scott founded Sister Reach, the first reproductive justice organization in the state of Tennessee. Under Ms. Scott's leadership, Sister Reach released their 2015 report on the need for comprehensive sexuality education for Southern youth of color. They also rolled out their pro-woman billboard campaign in opposition to anti-abortion billboards erected in Memphis, targeting Black men. They also rolled out their state and nationally based clergy cohort, which trains faith leaders on social justice issues and presented to the United Nations regarding the impact of the fetal assault law on Tennessee women. Sister Reach's work on fetal assault law led to a victory in defeating HB 1660, which criminalized mothers struggling with drug addiction during the 2016 legislative session. Thank you, Sister Sharice, for joining us tonight. Next, and no stranger to our town hall gatherings, is attorney Kim Kia Harris. Kim Kia has served as an attorney with the Illinois Fraternal Order of Police Labor Council since June of 2011. Prior to joining the Labor Council, she was the coordinator of labor relations for Memphis City Schools, assistant city attorney for City of Memphis, and assistant district attorney for Shelby County, Tennessee. Kim Kia is active in social justice issues and serves as co-chair of the Justice Task Force Committee, which is part of the Ben F. Jones chapter of the National Bar Association. In this role, Kim Kia leads her advocacy efforts on behalf of Purvis Payne, who was recently removed from Tennessee's death row after 33 years, and is helping to lead a Shelby County, Tennessee community education component on the power and roles of the prosecutor. I want to thank all of you for joining us here tonight, and I will now turn it over to attorney Elena Bloodworth. Again, Elena, thank you for being here, and we are excited about what you're about to share.
I am not going to be in front of you long at all. I am excited for this conversation. I bring greetings from the Black Public Defender Association. We feel honored and blessed to be a part of this project. This is focused in the community, and of course, being the social justice chair, or used to be the social justice chair, the Baton Rouge branch of the NAACP. I can't stress how important it is for community to define what public safety means to them. We have so many other entities trying to define what safety means, even though the community that's affected the most usually doesn't get too much of a say. So I definitely appreciate all the time and the effort you and so many of the panelists and the conversations that have been happening in the community. We are excited about it. I am going to get out of you all's way for you all to have this amazing conversation. I am going to be watching via YouTube. I believe it's already on in my living room. So I'm going to get you out of you all's way. But thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to even bring greetings from the Black Public Defender Association. And we're extremely excited about this conversation.
Well, thank you again, Attorney Bloodworth. You have been so you and the BPDA been so good to us and been so supportive. And we want to thank you for all of your hard work and efforts on the behalf of low-income families who may not be able, in a lot of cases, to get the help that they need. We are just so glad that the Black Public Defenders Association is there to help them along the way. So thank you again. All right, next up, Reverend Frank, are you with us tonight?
I am. I can't get my camera to turn on.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. There you go. Turn your camera on there, brother. There you are.
Here I am. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Reverend Frank Johnson. I'm sorry the dogs are barking in the background. But I do work, of course, around environmental justice. This is one of the things that I have actually found myself in. This conversation needs to be had. It needs to be talked about because so much is happening in our country right now. And like in just every other instance, we see that we are not going to be protected by these institutions. So I'm really excited for the panel. I see some great people. Miss Sharice, my classmate from the Great Overton High School. Kim Kia, just we've talked before. So I just look forward to it. And hopefully I'll have time to give that little bit of a testimony that Reverend Johnson, like myself, said that I needed to give. So I'll stop right there. And do I need to keep going or what?
No, you can go. You have, remember, you can just talk a little bit about what's going on in the environmental justice.
Oh, okay.
You just talk about just whatever you
Okay, I
want to
got
talk
you.
about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to come at it like this. So we know that the Supreme Court has taken off the little bit of protections that the EPA was offering as far as, air quality and things like that. Believe it or not, a lot of these protections were thin anyway. And we know when it comes to Black communities, they're almost non-existent. Those of you that don't know my story, I grew up in South Memphis, pretty much on all sides of South Memphis. And what I've come to realize over the years is that all of these spots that I lived in South Memphis just so happened to be either landfills or contamination zones. What I found out is that so much of Memphis is contaminated, and this issue is playing out in real time, and it's been playing out for generations in Memphis. One of the things that I found out while I was teaching was that there are so many Black people in this city that have been lead exposed. And if they're not lead exposed, they're contaminant exposed. My particular community, which sits next to the Memphis Defense Depot, if you don't know about the Defense Depot, both sites serve as a storage facility for the Department of Defense and its corporate contractors. You know, companies like Raytheon and Boeing all had a hand in it. And so anything that the Department of Defense or our Army or our Navy or anybody needed to kill people, chemically kill people, was stored at the Defense Depot starting in the 1940s. Just found out too that the depot actually sits on one of our main aquifers here in the city. So there's that danger of the contamination issue getting into our water stream. But also over the decades, these toxins that they stored at the Defense Depot leaked into our soil, got into our air. It's still, to this day, the site is still being remediated. The remediation process started in 1997. The site is still on the Superfund list 25 years later. It's still being remediated. It has not been removed. It is still a toxic location. So that just tells you right there that after 25 years of remediation, the site is still toxic. That just tells you the level of contaminants that were stored at that site. I actually came into this work starting in 2014 because my sister was diagnosed with a rare brain cancer. 2 days later, my only living auntie, biological auntie, was diagnosed with another rare brain cancer in the back of her head. My sister's was on the frontal lobe. My auntie's was in the back of her head. When it comes to my sister, it was a repeat. My mom had the exact brain cancer in the exact same part of the brain, and she was diagnosed in 1998. While I bring this up, is we don't understand the effects that these things have on the body. Lead exposure, for example, destroys the part of the brain that regulates, guess what? Behavior. So when we're talking about these issues that we've been seeing with our youth, when we've been seeing with our adults in the city, can directly be linked back to Memphis having being a hotbed for lead exposure, for contaminants. Memphis has a horrible history in that, and we're not dealing with it. But what we see is, we see our people not being diagnosed, not getting the help that they need, but yet there's plenty of room for them to be put in jail. My mother was diagnosed in 1998 with this brain cancer. Immediately, there was an immediate change in her behavior. My mother became aggressive. She became violent. She became unpredictable. And so we're talking about 2.5 years, almost 3 years of trying to really restrain her, keep her from hurting herself, keep her from hurting other people. And at the time, we thought that mom was having a complete nervous and mental health breakdown. What we did not understand at the time was that the position of the tumor in her brain was causing the shift in her behavior. And it didn't dawn on me until I actually started to teach school. Because I saw the exact same behaviors in the students that I was teaching. And I was teaching at LaRose Elementary, which of course is down from the old Foot Home site, which is now being morphed into South City. But most of us don't understand or don't know that Foot Homes was a landfill built on top of a landfill in the 1940s. I know this because my family was some of the first families moved into Foot Homes after the city came and took their houses. And so what we see is we see this cycle going on and on again, and we got people being labeled for all of these behaviors that they're committing, not knowing that they don't have any control over it. My mother became suicidal. When I tell you suicidal, where I would have to come home and take knives out of her hand. She tried to stab me quite a few times. Violent, aggressive, unpredictable. She left the house 3 times. She went out of town. I mean, just anything that you can name, she was doing. But we summed it all up to just her not being able to cope. And it makes me wonder how many Black folks in this city are actually dealing with issues like that and not getting the help that they need, but they're ending up in jail. Our young people are dealing with this and they're ending up suspended. They're ending up getting labeled, being put into juvenile detention, and nobody's doing CAT scans. Nobody's diagnosing anything. And our people are yet suffering. So just as we got over this, just as we were beginning to forgive ourselves about what happened to my mom, my oldest sister collapses. Diagnosis is the exact same thing. And my sister was very animate, very conscious of everything that she was doing, what she was eating. She was a nurse by trade. One of the reasons why she became a nurse is because she was what they used to call a sickly child. She was allergic to everything, had all of the allergies, severe allergies, all of these, any childhood ailment that you can name, she had. Well, what we discovered later on is that all of these ailments that she had was caused by lead exposure. Because of our time in Clayman and Foot Homes, because we know that housing projects were hotbeds for lead paint, lead tubs, lead pipes, and all of these things, my sister was lead exposed. And she had the classic symptoms, and it's symptoms that we see every day: eczema, asthma. These are classic symptoms of lead exposure. And we've been going for generations just thinking that this stuff runs in the family. But when you get lead exposed, it causes these things, it causes the behaviors, and also it alters your DNA. So you will actually pass these defects on if you have children. So we have all of this going on, and nobody's being diagnosed. And when we talk about public health, when we talk about being protected by law enforcement, these people are going to be labeled, these children and these adults are going to be labeled as being problematic. They're going to be saying that they have behavior disorders. They're going to grow up with these disorders, and eventually they could either hurt themselves or somebody else. But they're not being diagnosed. They're not being made aware of what's happening. And they don't understand what's even happening to them. They're just getting labeled as being bad, thrown in jail, and the key is being thrown away. And then somebody like our wonderful DA who just sent this in the mail today will get up and say that she's protected the community from a threat, when in actuality, that person has something going on up here that's not being diagnosed. And so that's part of my story and my headway into this work. And as far as what the Supreme Court has done, Memphis is already one of the most contaminated cities in the country. We have almost 300 Superfund sites alone that are not being remediated, and our air quality is horrible. Our water is getting to the point to where it's just lead, infused. And so, as Black communities, we had little to no protections already, but we just see now where our institutions are not designed and not here to protect us. They're chasing that corporate dollar, which breaks down and which actually, puts the focus on money. So it all goes back to money. And I'm not going to talk too long.
You're good. I mean, thank you for that. That's exactly what we needed to hear. That's exactly what, I'm looking at the chat here, and I want to encourage people watching. This is live stream. You can make comments and you can ask questions. I am trying to watch all the different live streams that's going on. So please like we have already in the chat already, a lot of people didn't even know about foot homes. It's history about foot homes. A lot of people don't know that this stuff is going on already. And you started the whole conversation off by saying that what the Supreme Court did was just hindered something that was already weakened to begin with. And it's just became, it's even weakened even more. So thank you, Reverend Johnson. And of course, when we open for Q&A, we will bring you back on and come in and talk a little bit more. Next up is Sharice Scott. Sharice, come on and bless us.
Hey, everyone. Awesome. So I wrote some notes down so that I don't miss anything, and just want to make sure that I'm able to share. And so thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Andre, for having me here. So excited to be here and to share with you today. Just a little bit about Sister Reach. We're a reproductive justice organization here in the city, and we work from a four-pronged strategy of education, policy and advocacy, culture change, and harm reduction. And just to give a little kind of level setting about reproductive justice, it's a term that was coined in Chicago in 1994 by 12 Black women while attending a conference to address the impact of the Clinton administration's attempt at healthcare reform. It's created to center the lived experiences of Black women around issues of reproductive and sexual health. And of course, over the last 28 years, it has also included the leadership, guidance, and brain trust of other women and folks of color in our movement who have centered as well their own populations and cultures within that framework. But the grounding around that framework, it was grounded in Black feminist theory and human rights. Central to reproductive justice theory is the universal human right to dignity, self-determination, and autonomy. Reproductive justice centers the people whose liberty has been violated and whose social and economic well-being and culture has been deliberately ignored. And it seeks to liberate and emancipate vulnerable populations from all forms of reproductive and sexual oppression. It really challenges us to move and expand our analysis beyond abortion in silo to be inclusive of the myriad of other issues that preclude women and people from achieving reproductive and sexual autonomy. But today I am here to talk about the Supreme Court decision and overturning Roe v. Wade, our work on that, and some analysis that we have and some of the policies that are happening here in the state of Tennessee. So that Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization decision that the Supreme Court delivered eliminated access to safe legal abortions for millions of people in the United States. The 6-3 ruling overturned the 50 years of precedent set by Roe v. Wade and strengthened in Planned Parenthood versus Casey. And currently there are 26 states in the United States that have near total abortion bans or prohibitions that limit access to legal abortion. In the majority opinion, Justice Alito wrote that Constitution does not include the right to abortion care. This flagrant decision not only thwarts constitutional due process guaranteed by the 14th Amendment and the right to privacy, but also affirms our advocates' fears of further attempts to undermine the legal basis for unenumerated rights regarding the sexuality, sexual behavior, and the reproductive rights of every American. The conservative anti-abortion right has gone to great lengths to stop women and people who give birth from having abortions, and their motives are more self-serving and disingenuous. They know something that the average American is not aware of, which is white women are not having babies at the rate of Black, Indigenous, Latina, and other people of color. They know that the estimates of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, as reported by the Economic Policy Institute, reported in 2016, says that people of color will become a majority of the American working class by 2032. This report further informs that as of 2013, the working class made up of working people, even without a college degree, constitutes nearly 2/3, which is 66% of the US civilian labor force between the ages of 18 and 64. Thus, wage stagnation and economic inequality can't be solved without policies aimed at raising living standards, for the working class. Because the working class is increasingly people of color, raising working class living standards will require bridging racial and ethnic divides. So why is this important? Because the working labor force are also the largest voting body in the United States. That includes Black women who have historically voted for the most progressive candidates who time and time again have centered the values Black women hold so dear to the survival of our families and communities. And if people of color become the largest voting base, white politicians lose political power. This political power has been slipping away since they switched their white voter targeted galvanizing cause from keeping schools segregated in 1954 in the landmark Supreme Court case of Brown versus Board of Education. One of the loudest champions post this decision was Reverend Jerry Falwell of maintaining segregated schools and denouncing homosexuality to galvanize the Christian right. What is conservative rights remedy to thwart this outcome? Population control. So the overturning of Roe v. Wade is really a Trojan horse, and all human rights freedoms that we hold so dear in our daily lives have the potential to being dismantled by governmental abuse and violence, including the rights of LGBTQIA+ people, voting rights, immigration rights, just to name a few. And we're seeing how this is playing out on the local level with some of what my homie Frank lifted up and others have been talking about on the call tonight. But that also includes the gerrymandering that we're seeing, not just in Tennessee, but across the country, gentrification with the displacement of low-income housing tenants, or even targeted mass purchases of homes away from working class residents who are disproportionately people of color, while skyrocketing rental properties that lock them out of being able to live in the communities that they choose. The surveillance of pregnant women's bodies who use drugs was the caveat to criminalizing women and people who give birth from seeking birth control and abortion care, and even the uptick of juvenile detention centers, the over-policing in the school system. And I believe that we will see a spike in child support criminalization for Black and brown men and boys as a result of all of this. All of these tactics are pointed directly to controlling the vote and suppressing the votes of people of color. What President Biden is doing right now in the Biden administration, on July 8th, President Biden signed an executive order to protect reproductive health services. He directed the Secretary of Health and Human Services to take the following steps: to protect access to medical abortion, ensure emergency medical care, protect access to contraception, launch outreach and public education efforts, and convene volunteer lawyers to support folks who are seeking abortion access, and those who are supporting folks to seek abortion access. He takes additional steps to protect patient privacy by addressing the transfer and sales of sensitive health-related data, combating digital surveillance related to reproductive health care services, and protecting people seeking reproductive health care from inaccurate information, fraudulent schemes, or deceptive practice. The order also addresses the heightened risks associated with seeking and providing reproductive care, and states that Biden and the Harris administration will support providers and clinics, ensuring access to accurate information, and provide leave for federal workers who are seeking access to medical care. The Women's Health Protection Act is more on the federal level, that protects the right to access abortions free of some obstacles, such as abortion bans, mandatory waiting periods, like here in Tennessee, we have a 48-hour waiting period, biased counseling, like we're seeing in some of the crisis pregnancy centers, the 2-trip requirement, and mandatory ultrasounds. I think some of the things for us as Black women, Roe v. Wade has always been the floor and not the ceiling. That is, our fight has always been for the resources and freedom to choose when and if we have children, and to be able to raise our families with dignity. The United States is already facing a worsening reproductive health crisis, and a post-Roe future makes it even more dangerous, not just for Black women, but for all folks who are seeking abortion care and their families. Black women will not stop fighting for our human and civil rights. Sister Reach will not stop fighting for our human and civil rights. And we won't stop fighting until reproductive justice is understood as the law of the land and adopted into the ways that we are thinking about accessing liberation for all people. Black people overwhelmingly support access to abortion. The majority, which is 80% of Black people, believe that abortion should remain legal and women should be able to get safe abortions. One of the ways that we've been fighting at Sister Reach over these last 10 or so years includes working with communities of faith to adopt a reproductive justice analysis while ensuring that religious freedoms curate opportunities of abundance for every person to thrive, whether they are the churched or the unchurched, and challenging the role of the Black Christian church very specifically, whose congregations and evangelism focuses are comprised of the people who live on the margins and will be disproportionately impacted, not only by this law, but by Christian nationalism overall, white supremacy, and hate. Some of the bills that I wanted to lift up that are occurring because because folks follow us on Facebook and they follow me even specifically on Facebook and are reaching out and are asking so many questions. I just wanted to use this opportunity to talk about some of what Tennessee very specifically is limiting around abortion access. The heartbeat bill is now legal in Tennessee. So to abort an unborn child who has a heartbeat, specifically the heartbeat bill protects unborn children at 6 weeks gestational age who have a heartbeat, and it also protects unborn children at 8 weeks gestational age or older. The provisions in the heartbeat bill have an affirmative defense for medical emergencies. We also have a trigger ban that was passed in 2019 that will go into effect 30 days after the SCOTUS decision, so somewhere around the 25th of this month, which was released on which will be released July the 24th. This law bans all abortions in Tennessee except when necessary to prevent death or serious risk of substantial and irreversible impairment of a major bodily function. Additionally, doctors could be charged with a felony for providing an abortion under this law in Tennessee. For abortion providers, most, if not all, abortion providers in the state have stopped offering abortions. I think that many of us have seen in the news that folks like Planned Parenthood have closed their doors as far as the abortion services that they offer, and they shifted from offering the soon to be criminalized service to directing those in need of abortion services to out-of-state clinics in states where abortion is still legal and offering assistance to get them there. We're also seeing the potential of interstate and digital surveillance. There is potential for artificial intelligence software to track those traveling for abortions. This software can access one's whereabouts through their GPS, shopping applications, the use of discount cards like your Kroger card, food applications like DoorDash, period trackers, which for folks like Sister Reach and others of us on the ground who've been teaching folks how to chart their menstrual cycles and using a period tracker app. Unfortunately, these are becoming more dangerous to use. So on more smartphones and tablets, states may be able to subpoena this information from phone carriers and application companies to incriminate those who are traveling for abortions. Some companies have advised that they will fight subpoenas to ensure that user information remains secure and confidential, and users can do their part by turning off location services on their phones and not utilizing discount cards, shopping applications, what have you, if or when traveling for abortion care. We also launched our 1-8-19-28 campaign, which is a natural family planning awareness tool that I actually created for myself some 20 years ago after I learned initially how to chart my own menstrual cycle. I am a Black woman, and not just a Black woman who supports reproductive justice, but who have had an abortion in my life. However, I felt more empowered when I understood my fertility and understood how to track my ovulation. And so I'm going to be doing a webinar with folks on August the 5th on our Sister Reach page, Facebook Live, walking folks through how to use the 1-8-19-28 natural family planning tool, which is not an app at all. It's something that you can write down, use a calendar that you have at home, and track your own cycle without it being tracked through digital surveillance. I think that's all. That's all that I have for now. But I do think the district attorney's role in this I want to lift up, since we're right at a voter, at that thinking about how we're voting for our DA. I know that our candidate Steve Mulroy has said that he will not prosecute folks who are seeking abortion care, but district attorneys will be integral to combating abortion bans, as they have the ultimate say on whether to pursue charges against those who are in violation of state abortion policies. And I'll stop there.
No, that's great. I'm glad you put that in there, because we were gonna, if not, I was gonna try to bring that up, because elections are going to matter more now than they did, just a year ago. And so I'm so glad that you brought that up. Thank you, and hold tight, because next up is Attorney Kimkia Harris. We're gonna bring her in, and then there she is, Kimkia. So glad to have you again. And then after you, we're going to all come back, and then we will just have an open discussion. The chat is getting hot. We got some questions on social media. So without any further ado, Kimkia Harris.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. I appreciate this opportunity to talk, more about why the Supreme Court, or how the decisions that the Supreme Court of the U.S. has recently passed makes us feel safe or less safe. I'm tasked with to talk about the case of Vega versus Takeo, which deals with the Miranda rights case. Now, almost everyone in America is familiar with the Miranda rights, even if they just pick it up from TV shows or just haven't had, their personal experience with law enforcement. But essentially, Miranda rights are those rights that the law enforcement, when they take someone in custody, must give you in order to protect your ability going forth. In particular, the Fifth Amendment that states that you have a right to not incriminate yourself. So in this case, I've had an opportunity to kind of dig a little bit into it. This case deals with the fact of whether or not Miranda rights are constitutionally protected rights or not. And if they're constitutionally protected rights under the U.S. 1983 action, which allows someone to bring an action, cause an action against any state actor who operates under the color of law, that's the magic words, that deprives the rights and privileges or immunities secured by the Constitution and laws. Essentially, can you sue a state actor for violating your constitutional rights? In this particular case, Takeo, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Takeo is a man who's given an opportunity, who was questioned by a police officer, but was not Mirandized. And in the process, he gave a statement that technically incriminated himself. He was able to go to a criminal court, and each time he tried to suppress the statement by saying that this statement was not, I wasn't Mirandized, it shouldn't be used against me. And in both times, the courts denied that. And he actually went to trial with that statement in tow, but beat the case essentially. So once he beat the criminal case, he turned around and he did something, and he filed a 1983 action against the police officer who took his statement without Mirandizing him. So this is where we kind of get into what you are, I'm sure most people have heard the terminology of qualified immunity for police officers. This is a portion of that. So essentially, qualified immunity for a police officer or law enforcement officer states that unless they violate your law, your rights under the color of law, the 1983 section, then you can't bring an action against them. Their immunity is limited. In this particular scenario, as I stated, Mr. Takeo filed an action against the state actor Vega and stated that you not Mirandizing me violated my constitutional rights. So very twisted opinion. The majority opinion is Justice Alito, and he basically spends most of the time talking about prophylactics. Now, that sounds like something more that Ms. Scott should probably be addressing, but it is a theme throughout the majority opinion about the fact, and they're trying to state that the Miranda rule is a prophylactic rule designed to protect the Fifth Amendment, but it's not a right secured by the Constitution. It's very confusing. So it's essentially, they bent over backwards to justify that in this situation, the plaintiff cannot bring his action against the state actor because him being violated and his Miranda rights being violated, which was not disputed because he was not Mirandized, that was not the Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate yourself. So how do you confuse the two? I don't know. That's why they use terminology like prophylactic rule to basically state it's a protection. It's not really the rule, but it's designed to ensure that the rule is protected. Twisted brain, everybody's brain is twisted. The dissent, which is actually written by Justice Kagan, basically states the Fifth Amendment and Miranda is part of the Constitution. It is a constitutional protected right. So in this analysis, whether the Miranda protections are a right that are secured by the Constitution within meanings of 1983, basically the dissent says, yes, they are. You can use this terminology of prophylactic, but that doesn't make sense because what we're looking at is the Miranda rights are your Fifth Amendment constitutional rights. The dissent goes through an analysis that shows in previous decisions where that this is how a constitutional right has been identified. It can't be overridden by Congress. So Congress cannot override the US Constitution. Your rights are that are embedded in the Constitution. Congress can't write a law and says, okay, now you don't have to do Miranda rights anymore. So that in and of itself shows it's constitutional if Congress can't alter or modify it. It also applies to the states. When you think about the US federal government and the federal court system, everything doesn't go down to the states. It has to be certain ways that their law, excuse me, my dog now wants to bark. The rules and laws would affect the federal level, but at certain aspects, it might impact the state level. Well, in this scenario, this is an extension. Even a state legislator cannot come and undermine your Miranda rights. So that is another example that this is indeed a constitutional based right, not a prophylactic to protect some vague constitutional right. So this is pretty much a decision that states that, and let's put it in real world application. You get arrested. Well, you have an encounter with a police officer. Let me take that back. You're not in custody. At some point, they don't give you your Miranda rights. Are you in custody? Are you not in custody? That's the question. But you give a statement that's against your interests. And then later, like in this particular scenario, you then say, well, I gave a statement that was against my interests. You didn't Mirandize me and I was in custody and you didn't tell me that I had a right to remain silent. The criminal aspect has its protections, but now I want to turn around and sue you, Mr. Officer, because if you had not, if you give me my Miranda rights, then I would not have a damage. I could have been wrongfully convicted. I spent time in jail. I've lost my job. I've been on, in a position where I don't have been able to post bond. So I have been in prison, even waiting trial. I have all these damages that accrue because of your actions. Do I get to turn around and now file a lawsuit against you? And this is what the Supreme Court is saying is no. So this is where the protections and whether or not, that we have been holding dear, it might protect you criminally, but what happens if the criminal system fails you? Do you have redress if you are wrongfully put through the criminal system? And that is why this case is so dangerous. I represent police officers. I have strong opinions about qualified immunity. I think that there should be some qualified immunity. However, I do see the issue in this scenario where it comes to the fact that this is a constitutional protected right that the majority bent over backwards to try to say that it wasn't, even though everything that they've held in the past have shown that it was. So my question is, do we feel safer? I would say no.
Good explanation of that. Thank you for that, because I wanted to, and you brought it up at the end, I wanted to talk about, Kim Kiel, come on back. Where you go? I wanted to talk. You brought it up at the end, and I'm going to bring back everybody in a minute, but you talked about it at the end, qualified immunity. And it seems as if that case now have strengthened police officers on the street to do pretty much, whatever. And there is, and you laid it out perfectly, because if a person is not Mirandized, or if a person is has an encounter with police officers, and then that person gets arrested, and then you go through all of the process of trying to get reestablished, you should be able, in the United States of America, to sue for damages, especially if it's a constitutional right. But now it's not. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And anything else you want to add about of that, and about how police officers perform on the street?
One only thing that I would like to draw the attention, I want to I think everyone has ended their presentation similarly, connecting it to the district attorney's race. The difference between the qualified immunity that you see for police, there are ways to pierce through it, even though this has really rolled this back some more in certain circumstances and situations. But I need to stress that most district attorneys across the country have complete immunity, meaning that at no time can you sue them for their misactions or misdeeds. So the focus has been, in my opinion, a lot on police, and I'm not saying that there shouldn't be, but let's not forget that a district attorney can make policies and set the tone and charge cases that are incorrect, or they can get wrongful conclusions, and yet there is no redress for you.
That is a great point. I want to bring back Reverend Frank, and then Sister Sharice. Y'all come on back here. All right. And we are going to bring everybody back. I think we got some questions already right here in the Q&A. My sister Sonia Robichar asks, should a person, if not Mirandized, immediately ask to speak to a lawyer and not give any more statements?
I'm going to tell you this. No matter, whenever you talk to the police, do not talk to the police. Always ask for an attorney. So if you're not Mirandized, if they do try to Mirandize you, and we had I think was it our second town hall meeting where we had Donna Armstead on here, who was a 30-year public defender. This was the best advice she said. Don't talk to police, and then shut up.
Right.
Say, I'm not going to talk to police, and then stop talking.
Right.
Don't keep talking. So rule, do not talk to the police and stop talking. That's your rule.
There you go. There you go. I want to ask about, I want to go back to the Roe v. Wade case, Sharice. And we were talking before the, let's see here. We were talking before the town hall, and we talked about Roe just being the beginning. This is not like, hey, let's wash our hands, we're through now. Can you kind of unpack what it means so that everybody that may not see the connection to this decision, can you kind of unpack how we are all connected in this thing?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're all connected. I think it's important to think about the ways that people's civil rights have been impacted by the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and that is only, which is why in our movement spaces, we're really talking about this as a Trojan horse, as a way to kind of test to see how people are responding to this, and understanding that this only opens the kind of legal playing field or political playing field to dismantle other human rights, right? So, I think that connecting this to voter suppression is a very important component. I think connecting this even to our local elections is really important, and what that looks like for voting for our DA, thinking about who our judges are going to be, who will be our police chiefs across the country. But I think it's also important to think about other rights, because I think that folks who can't give birth were like, oh yeah, this isn't my issue, and this doesn't really bother me, this doesn't really impact my life, but it absolutely impacts your ability. First of all, abortion care, abortion access is a family issue. It's not a woman's issue, right? I think that, you know, even on the progressive side, we've not done a really great job of making that a synonymous issue with women's rights, as if women have no other rights and people who can give birth have no other rights that they need to be concerned about, right? So, you know, we're seeing this, we're seeing these types of offenses happening in immigration reform and or the lack thereof. We're seeing it in LGBT rights. And I think that the LGBT rights community needs to absolutely get ready, because LGBT rights are absolutely next. But this is even bigger than this. Let's just take it. Let's just go on the piece around reproductive and sexual health care and access. You know, now we have folks, we're hearing, even on a call I was on today, about women in the pro-life community who are having to seek out in vitro fertilization to become pregnant because of, you know, issues where their partner may be sterilized, not even being able to use IVF services, because this is also connected, right, to the way that this law, how this law is going to impact people. This is going to impact pregnant women who are trying to have children, right? Understanding that for many women, you know, we have miscarriages more than we have children. So a miscarriage is now about to be profiled as a potential abortion attempt, right? I think that we already saw in the state, which is one of the reasons why we fought so hard against the fetal assault law that put pregnant women in prison who use drugs, because if we were desensitized about pregnant women using drugs going to jail, we would be desensitized about pregnant women who get abortions going to jail, right? Not thinking about any of the extenuating circumstances. Right now in Indiana, the GOP attorney general is coming after a doctor who gave a 10-year-old an abortion who crossed state lines because she had been raped, right? So now we're taking away the opportunities for little babies to be able to get an abortion who are victims of rape and incest.
And can I just add, Sharice, I'm glad you brought that case up, because prior to that, like a day or two ago, many on the GOP side was saying that it was a lie, that, you know, that the pro-choice crowd was trying to get people riled up, and that there's no case. And now it's almost darn if you do, darn if you don't. I'm going to take it either way. And so,
but even interfering in the corporate sector around, you know, the corporate sector offering birth control services to their employees. Everybody who uses birth control isn't even using it because they're trying to not have or have a baby, right? Some folks are using birth control for so many other reasons, but we saw that in the Hobby Lobby case some time ago as well. So all of these things are now becoming more connected. This, you know, it was important then, but even more important now for all of the social justice sectors to work as one body. Because all of our human rights, all of our civil rights are being dismantled, one issue after the next issue after the next issue. Is immigration reform is definitely going to be something that we're going to see, you know, how that is impacted in the next 3 to 5 years, right? And if we happen to not get another Democratic president, or if President Biden does not run for a second term, I think that we're really going to see the fast tracking of a lot of our civil rights being dismantled. But the one for us as Sister Reach that's very important is religious liberties, right? What does it look like for folks who believe in that same Bible that folks are using to weaponize, that they actually aren't committing a crime, and that it is a religious value for them to be self-determining about their bodies? Or what does it say for an atheist or a Jew or somebody who has totally different values to be mandated under a one particular theological regime and without those types of beliefs and understandings? What does this mean for America? So democracy as we know it is slipping away.
Wow, I'm telling you, and that's one of the reasons why I started tonight talking about the case in Maine. I mean, if I can now, you know, with this framework, if I can now say that public dollars can go to this particular religious school that has a religious framework that says that certain people are not really human, or that certain people should not be looked upon as being citizens or
That's
whatever.
right. That's right.
Whatever religious framework that I want to come up with, but I can still get, public money.
That's right.
I would have a problem with that. I know I would have a problem with that, giving you my money, and you are not being holistic in your approaches. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is the reason why we wanted to talk about this tonight, because I am of the belief that people are not as safe as they were a month ago.
And I think it's important for us to think about how those dollars are funding our HBCUs.
Right.
Right. Those dollars fund HBCUs right now. And many, let's look at Lane, for example. Let's look at TSU. Let's look at Rust. Let's look at Lemoyne on. A lot of those dollars are controlling not only what our young people in those higher education institutions are learning, but what they have access to, and how they could be separated from their education, right? If not following, as according to what these, what all of these types of restrictions that come with receiving religious dollars mean. So I think it's just something that we really need to consider. So, where you go, Reverend Andre? You went away.
Okay, I'm right here. I want to bring in Frank here. Frank, can you talk a little bit about what's going on here locally with environmental justice and how that issue, Sharice just talked about all the social justice groups getting together. We need to really band together. So can you talk a little bit about what's going on with environmental justice here in Memphis and Shelby County?
Well, I would love to jump in on something that Sharice said and tie it back to the environmental justice side. So the Defense Depot, one of the things that we learned was that they had a toxin that they stored there. It was called Deldrum. It was a pesticide that caused a lot of issues. Deldrum causes spontaneous miscarriages. Spontaneous miscarriages.
Okay.
Crazy thing is, my mother always made it a point. My mother had 3 children, but my mother had 2 miscarriages. So she would have had 5 children. She had a miscarriage, one before me, one right after me. She always said that, she always felt that she was pregnant with me and my sisters, primarily she spent most of her time in Texas while she was pregnant with us. And those just so happened to be the 3 children that she actually carried full term. In 1999, my oldest sister had a spontaneous miscarriages, completely unexplained, don't know why it happened. But we know, again, environmental justice is what? An issue in Memphis. So we have a health effect coming out of that. And you just think now, my mom and my sister would have been criminalized under these policies right now. And I think what Sharice Scott said is completely true. They are going after everything because, and like me and Andre have talked about this, the country is collapsing. It's falling apart. And so in every collapsing empire, what do you see at the very end? You see a clamp down. You see a micromanaging. And Black folks, we've always been micromanaged in this country. And I also want to bring something else to the table too when we talk about our political leaders. And I'm talking about political leaders from across the board. What angers me so much about the overturning of Roe v. Wade is that this could have been protected. But we have had elected officials that claim they're on our side, playing political games with this issue when it could have been protected. Just like they did with voting rights in 2012 when they let that go. And then turned around and blamed Black folks, saying that Black folks wasn't turning out to vote. But you ain't talking about how y'all allowed the Voting Rights Act to be gutted. We have had Democrats, and we know what the Republicans are wanting to do. We know what they want. We've had Democrats to not approve the Right to Choice Act in 2009, which would have protected it. We just had the 2 most powerful Democrats in this country down in Texas endorsing Henry Cuellar, who was an anti-choice Democrat. And so this is why we have to be serious, not only about voting, but calling these damn folk out when they don't do what the hell they're supposed to do, because who is going to suffer? And I get angry about this because Almost every Black woman in my life has had to go under that knife for fibroids, for miscarriages, or some other thing. And this is not natural. This is not natural. It goes back to environmental health. It goes back to all of these things. But at the same time, like I said before, we have had little to no protections. When my elder Doris DeBerry Bradshaw picked up this fight in the 1990s, now mind you, this fight against the depot has been going on probably since the 1960s. They told her that the reason why our 11-year-old girls here in these neighborhoods were getting uterine cancer was because they had too many sex partners. The EPA came in and tried to brush it aside, saying that there was nothing wrong, that they couldn't find anything wrong. So our elders had to call in and have our own soil tested, had to have our own groundwater tested. And of course, you know what they found. They found the contaminants, they found the arsenic, they found all of these toxins. There was mustard gas in the ground up there. There was napalm in the ground up there. So exactly what Sharice Scott said. They are coming after everything. Just a few months ago, I think a month or so ago, they got rid of the policy to where prisoners cannot even introduce new evidence in their cases. So you not only want to put folks in jail, but you want to make it damn near impossible for folks to get out. And all of this is because, and there's so many factors in that, but like Cherie said, we have to come together on this because they're not going to stop. They are, I mean, as this thing falls apart, you are going to see some atrocious things happening. One of the things I was so happy to hear is I'm hearing people interested in being midwives and doulas again, because what are we going to have to do? We're going to have to rely on each other to do these things. And I'm just so angry because political games are being played with our bodies, with our health, with our lives are being played with. And as we go forward, we can no longer be quiet and respectable when we call these things out, even against politicians that we like. We have to look at these records. We have to look at what the hell they've been standing for, what they've been voting for, who they've been voting for, and who they've been taking money from.
My. Yeah, you're right. We've been talking about that. That's going to be the key, and we will be remiss if we did not talk a little bit, Kim Kia, about this election that's coming up. I mean, we have an election. We have an opportunity to do just that. Looking at the candidates, looking at their platforms, looking at their past record, and then making a decision and really supporting a person that we think at least we could lead, push, guide, cajole, whatever verb you want to use to do the right thing. So Kim Kia, can you just again, because you are so eloquent when you say this, can you explain why this election for the DA is so vast? Why is the DA so important?
District attorney is the most powerful position, period. I won't even compare it to the mayor. I won't compare it to the police chief, because I was an assistant DA for 3 years. And I had, as a young little 20-something-year-old attorney, fresh out of law school, can determine if an adult man goes to jail for 8 years or more. I can determine if he goes on probation. I can determine if he's going to have a record for the rest of his life and diversion. And that was authority that was given to me by my boss. So he was giving me less authority than he had as the district attorney. So it's important because everything that you hear Sharice talk about and Frank talk about, they are saying that all of this is going to tunnel through the district attorney's office and the criminal justice system. And if you just go to 201 Poplar, who do you see down there? You see us. If you go to juvenile court, who do you see down there? You see us. So they're saying these issues may not impact you directly. You might not have grown up in an area that is contaminated and have these health problems. You might not feel like you have a position when it comes to women's reproductive health, but it will impact us as a people, and it has always impacted us as a people. So I want to call out what Frank said, politicians. I want to call out people who know better, who are in our community, in the religious communities, whatever communities there are, that are selling you out and getting in a pulpit and telling you that you need to vote for the status quo when they know it's against our interests. They know it's killing us. They are the ones who allegedly are getting these phone calls in the middle of the night. The juniors downtown in Sewell Poplar, but they don't have any authority without it being an 8-year cycle to help you get your child out of jail. So when the 8 years come around, guess all of a sudden they can help you with junior, but 7 years through that, junior is in jail. You have to keep in mind that those people are lying to you. They're lying to us. And when we started Purpose Pain 2 years ago, it was to illustrate, not only to help him, who we know is an innocent man in jail, get his case out there for the world to see. But it was an illustration to show the corruption that exists in Memphis, Tennessee. I've been posting articles about Amy on my Facebook page for years and no one ever said anything. And I'm like, do you see this? Like, this is bad. No one said anything. So when we got to Purpose and we have evidence that we could use to exonerate him with the DNA testing, guess what? It disappeared. And to this day, it has not shown up. It's been 2 years. We have not seen these fingernail clippings that could probably have sent him home 2 years ago, but it's gone. So don't fall for the okie doke. They're using fear. They're telling you that you should be afraid, that the crime rate is terrible. We're locking people up. That don't work. It does not work. You lock people up and they keep coming back. They, like you said, they go to crime school, they go to criminal school, they learn how to be a better criminal, and they come back out and they have a recidivism. There are things that we can do in our community, especially when it comes to our young people, to rehabilitate them and to help incorporate them back in the community, because it's not just us. And one of the examples I like to use about policing our communities and over policing our communities is if you had 2 children, you have one child that you hang over every time of the day. You're there when they wake up, you're there when they go to sleep. So you catch them when they don't make their bed, you catch them when they don't put the toothpaste cover back on. Hey, you didn't drop the toilet seat. Hey, you didn't do your homework. Hey, you didn't put the milk back in the refrigerator. Then you have another child, you might circle in there 5 minutes. So you might catch the child not put the toothpaste cap back. And then you might catch him not turn his light on at night. That's how the difference between the Black community and the white community are police. White people do everything we do. If they were police like us, they would pick us up. They would pick them up as much of these little they don't matter crimes. Some things just shouldn't be crimes. They criminalize our young people for just being young and dumb. Sometimes you're just young and dumb and you make young and dumb decisions. And I have seen, like Judge Lee Coffey, who I'm also against, Judge Lee Coffey take a juvenile record that was years ago and use it to make someone else's sentence who's been convicted longer. There are bad people in the system who don't give a damn about you. They're out there at your churches, they're giving speeches, and your pastors are inviting them in. And I'm saying, take the time to listen. I'm not even in Memphis anymore. I'm in Chicago. You see, I can show you, there's an air train going past my house right now. See, I am not here. So why do I care? I care because this is my hometown. I care because when I was a young prosecutor, I used to put away so many young Black men, 16 and 17 years old, and it just got to me and I couldn't take it anymore and I left. So I'm here because I know that we can do better. We are a city that are the majority of us down there. Why should we not take back our office? Why should we take our office? Period. We never had it. Take it and change it. And if Steve Mulroy don't do what we want him to do in 8 years, he out of there too. We're holding him accountable just like we hold it. But Amy doesn't give a damn about us. And she can do what she wants. And stop falling for the okie doke. Stop letting the cussing pastor and all these other folks tell you who to vote for. Look at the person who is gonna do change. If he doesn't do it right, go to the next person that does change. That's what being accountable is for. But do not listen to these pastors who tell you what to do when they don't care about you and ain't helping you through most of the year. I'm sorry.
Listen.
I
feel like dropping the Cash App and to lift up an offering or something. Y'all are preaching up in here.
I'm just gonna say, my Lord, my Lord.
My. But that's exactly what we need, and that's exactly the kind of passion and fire that we need to get people to understand. As I have always said about this whole movement, this is a movement. This all we're doing is big movement. Just look at it as an umbrella movement. On the movement tree, the lowest hanging fruit is voting, electoral politics, to actually get up and go cast a vote or mail in a ballot if you can, physically get there. That's the low hanging fruit. It is not the catch all and be all, but it is the foundational piece to begin to start to do the work. Because guess what? If you do not have a person that is sympathetic, care, compassionate, understanding, or someone who will listen to reason, or someone who is even afraid, because if I don't do it, then I might lose. If you don't have anybody in there that actually sign the legislation that you're pushing, you are still going to not get what you want. And so what I have always said is that voting is the low-hanging fruit. And I'm thinking about as you know, I'm working on me and Dr. Amanda Neal Edgar, we're working on our follow-up book on Black Lives Matter. And one of the people who we interviewed looked at voting like this, and it's something that I am going to adopt and I'm going to start pushing. He said it like this. He said, voting for him is selecting the enemy he wants to fight. So if I can pick my enemy, because he's thinking like everybody's an enemy. He's an African-American guy. So everybody's an enemy, but if I can at least pick them, then I can work with that. So even if you're going to be that cynical about it, voting is still the low-hanging fruit. So that's one. The second thing is, you brought up young people, young African-American men, women, young folk, and young folk in general. One of the things that I have always said again, and I have, and it has been in our research, been kind of demonstrated as being a truism. One of the ways that we can help young people is to get them involved in the movement. If you are involved, I have seen it with my own eyes, I've seen it anecdotally, and I have now researched it and doing these focus group interviews. When a person gets involved, all of a sudden the person begins to understand where they are, how they got there, and starts to look around and say, man, I had this thing all wrong. I need to be doing this, this, and this instead of what I've been doing. Now I understand it's not my dude over here that's really holding me down. There's a big old system in, and once they get there and they got the fire and the desire and the energy, they get behind, and all of a sudden you see the change because they are now part of something much bigger than themselves. And I have been pushing to people to get involved in the movement. I always like to say the movement, and then you pick your movement, whatever, that you, if it's criminal justice, fight for 15, environmental, reproductive justice, whatever it is, you get involved in that and work it and partner up. And then you get to meet some wonderful people. You get to meet other folk who will like you, who understand where you are and understand where you are going or where you can go. And then you'll find mentors, you'll find relationships, you even will find fellowships and relations. And guess what else you will find? You will also find, since we've been talking about religion, it's been brought up, you will also find that everybody does not subscribe to white conservative evangelicalism. All of a sudden, you will find out that Jesus was this radical revolutionary. All of a sudden, you will find out that that Christianity is not what I've been seeing on TV. And all of a sudden, you will see that the faith tradition is much bigger than you could even imagine. And you can see other faith traditions actually getting along. Why? Because they're working together to solve a common problem. And all of a sudden, you just might understand that, wait a minute, I don't have to just push this all back. I can just look at this thing, or even if you don't want to, I don't have to disdain it any longer, simply because now I have met Reverend Frank, I've met Sharice, I've met Kim Kia, I met me, and you met me, and all of a sudden, now you see a different position. That's what we need to do. And man, we got so much going on in the chat. Carol is talking about what they're doing in Florida. I think I've said this publicly. Florida is the laboratory. Florida is actually, I think, the laboratory for all of this. Other states are, tinkering, but Florida is the laboratory. Sonia talking about Black women and reproductive rights, especially, and the health disparities of Black women as well. Laura Sullivan, grad student here at the University of Memphis, talking about the criminalizing of folks in prison, having healthy foods, talking about all of those. I mean, all of this connects. All of this connects. And once we begin to understand that, I think we will be better off for it. Anybody got any closing remarks? We coming close to our time. I want to give everybody an opportunity just to have some closing remarks for tonight.
I'll jump up and
all
jump
right.
in. So last month I celebrated a birthday. I turned 45 last month. One of the things that we do now for my oldest sister is my middle sister, actually, my oldest sister lives in Drummond's with her husband and her family. And so my middle sister goes up every day and spends the day with her with nobody, because we don't want her to be by herself. And so on my birthday, I get a call from my middle sister, because I know she's out there with big sister. And so, and she puts my big sister on speakerphone, and my sister wishes me, my older sister wishes me happy birthday. And the reason why that's so special is because of the brain cancer and the radiation that she had to take. Big sister almost completely lost her ability to talk. And my older sister is 12 years older than me. And if you know my relationship with my sisters, we, all three of us are tight. But it was that older sister that taught me how to read. I learned how to read, reading her nursing books while I was in elementary school, because she was in nursing school at the same time. Karen was always a force to be reckoned with, not afraid, bold. She took a board position at the Med a few years ago before she got sick. And she only lasted on the board for 3 weeks. And I asked her, I said, well, why did you come off the board? You took your scrubs off, you put your heels on. She said, I came off the board when I realized that I was only there to be the token Black one, and that my almost 30 years of a nursing experience and medical experience wasn't valued. And she said, I'd be damned if I sit up in a hospital and sign off on policy that I know is going to kill people. And so this fight is personal to me because of that, because it maimed my sister. And for doing what? I mean, she went back and became a nurse because of all of these problems that she had as a child. And now she has trouble walking. She has trouble talking. And my other sister, fibroid, the size of a 6-month-old child, literally a few months after our father passed away, that they can't even explain where it came from. And so when we talk about the connectivity in this spills over into everything. We were still dealing with the trauma of watching our mother go through what she went through. And we were just making peace with that when my sister got sick. So when we say why we do things, this is why. And me getting into this work, I think I told Sharice this. You begin to see how all of these issues are connected. You begin to see it. When I saw those children at LaRose with those behavior disorders, and nobody, and I recognized it because these are just like the kids that I grew up with. And I'm seeing everybody's telling them that they're bad, that they're this. And I'm like, no, it's something else to it. They got eczema and asthma. They got these marks and spots. It's something else. And that's when I got into the water stuff, the lead in the water. Like all of this stuff is connected. And then when these young people grow up, they're either, they're either being diagnosed with stuff, or they have these behavior disorders that, and it turns into these outrageous behaviors. They're being criminalized and they're not being helped. And this is a generational problem now. This is an issue. All of this is connected. It's not separate.
That's right. Thank you, Reverend Frank. Thank you. Anybody else who wants to go next?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say I really appreciate you convening this space, and I think it really matters that you are a pastor that did this. I know that you hold many roles and do so much work in our community and the academic space. But I think that it matters when our faith leaders get involved in these issues. And I think so much, as somebody who is a person of faith, and I know that in our communities, we don't, we say that we don't want to be political as church folks, but we really don't have, we no longer have the convenience of not fighting for the needs and the issues that are impacting our neighbors. It is all of our problem, what's happening to the person next door, right? And I think that you've done a really great job of, living a revolutionary life while preaching a revolutionary gospel and modeling a revolutionary life in front of people, so that folks understand. I think many times people don't know how to get into this because they feel like, what is it going to cost you? It's going to cost you everything, right? It's going to cost you everything.
My God.
Right? And that's what this is all about, and if it's not going to cost you anything, then there's no need to be a part of it, So I just want to say thank you, for inviting me to be in this space and allowing me, because not everybody allows folks to come talk about abortion who run a church. You know what I'm saying? And, and to talk about it, not just in a very siloed, only kind of rightsy way, but in a very, comprehensive, human rights centered, abundance centered way. All of this is for us to be able to live abundant lives, and all of the ways that these policies that are coming down from the Supreme Court are impacting our ability to do just that, to live a life of abundance. Even if you don't connect that to anything spiritual, right? You deserve that as a birthright.
Yes.
And so I just appreciate that, and I put our info in the chat, and I hope folks tune in on August 5th who want to learn about the natural family planning.
Yeah, please let us know. We will help you get that out and share that. But let me just add, Sharice, you have been wonderful for the city of Memphis and in Shelby County as well. You brought reproductive justice, the term, the work, how to do it, what it means. You brought it here to Memphis, and you have helped me even understand it in a more holistic way, in which I can ground it within my faith. And when I talk to the congregation, or when I talk to other people about this, I am grounded, yes, in my faith, but I'm also grounded in the understanding of what reproductive justice and the holistic approach that you take at Sister Reach, and the work that you do with your team. Awesome. And I want to thank you as well too. So right back at you. Kim Kia, you've been rolling with me ever since the beginning of this thing. So I guess it is befitting if you have the last word on the panel.
Well, I did want to say this. First of all, Sharice and Frank, I mean, you open up my eyes. I'm just be very frank. I didn't know a quarter of what you guys just shared. And the fact that you could tie it into the safety element, and also, be honest with you, tie into the election that I'm so passionate about, and just show that there are so many consequences in so many ways that our decisions impact everyday life. every single day. Like, I appreciate it. I've known Frank since I thought you were still in your 20s. When you just said you were 45, I'm like,
I wish.
like, has it been that long? Oh my God, I guess he aged when I aged. Okay, so there you go. And Sharice's new sister, I just love listening to you talk, and I've learned so much from that. Dr. Johnson is my blood brother, and whatever he brings together, it's great. And that is what he did with this panel. So the only thing that I have to say is Dr. Vernon Johns, everybody know this is my quote. When you see a good fight, get in it. And fights that we just laid out here, the way that you start fighting is you go to the polls and you vote. Thank you.
All right. Well, listen, the Reverend Frank Johnson, Sister Sharice Scott, and Attorney Kim Kia Harris, and Attorney Elena Bloodworth, I want to thank all of you for coming tonight and being a part of this third town hall, Reimagining Public Safety. We hope we said something or something was shared in the chat or on Facebook or YouTube that will be helpful and beneficial to you. If you are interested in joining us in this work, we are continuing to do this work. Email us at reimaginingps@gmail.com, reimaginingps@gmail.com. If you have an idea for a town hall, if you have an idea on something that we can do out in the community, or more importantly, if you want to talk about what does it take to be safe in this community. As I mentioned earlier, we want to move the conversation away from just, increased policing or, teachers having guns in classrooms, any of that stuff. We want to talk about safety in other terms. And so if you got some ideas, we would love to hear you. And who knows, we may even want to do a town hall centered around that. It's reimaginingps@gmail.com. Also, I am going to save this chat because the chat was on fire tonight within the Zoom room. And so this will be replaying on social media throughout the week, and as well as the other two town halls. And so if you miss it, or if you're coming in and you're catching the tail end of this, because we're about to wrap up, don't worry about it. You can watch it on my Facebook page, on G-Life's public advocacy page, Twitter page, all of these type of different pages as well. For the Black Public Defenders Association, our partners in this Reimagining Public Safety, I am the Reverend Dr. Andre Johnson, Senior Pastor of Gifts of Life Ministries, Executive Director of the G-Life Public Advocacy Initiative. I want to say thank you again, and until next time, be safe and God bless.